Fusing the blockchain with AI to make predictions about the future we can all see. Jordan's episode hits the basics of Bitcoin's consensus and how it's so powerful that we can all get together and check each other's work. And just goes from there into this future space that's going to blow your mind. And we give you Jordan. Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. With Sat Chats, we are building the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center to serve as your gateway to generational wealth. So if you're new to Bitcoin, we want to chat about sats with you. Head to satchats.com to grab your slot in the studio today. I'm your host, Stuart Bitcoin Maxi, who wears prescription sunglasses to protect you and your loved ones from my Bitcoin laser eyes.
And I'll be your co-host, Chris, founder and CEO of Ithaca Hummus, proud multi-coiner and Bitcoin smash buyer.
So smash that like and subscribe like Chris Smash buys Bitcoin. When we hit 999 subscribers on this channel, we are going to pick one from among you and drop 1 million sats on your head. Immediate, overnight, satillionaire. Do it now.
That's
Do
hot.
it now.
That's hot, isn't it, Jordan?
That's very hot. That's awesome.
That's very hot.
Choose
yeah.
me.
So, Jordan, you need to subscribe so you can get a chance at this 1 million sats, brother.
Yeah, definitely.
What else are we going to do at 999 plus one?
Yes. So we are going to unlock a live show Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern, where we're all going to jump on YouTube and the various streaming platforms. We're going to be chatting about sats live with everybody. All our past guests will be in there vibing. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
So help us get to 999 plus one as quickly as humanly possible. Now, today, for you satillionaires out there listening, we have Jordan. Jordan has got himself a Bitcoin story, and kind of interesting to see the progression that he went through in terms of his thought process. So we're going to hear all about that today. But before we do, Jordan, can you help our satillionaires get to know you a little bit?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So my name is Jordan. I'm the founder of Satori Net, satorinet.io. I had a career in business intelligence. And so I've always been into like data science, distributed systems, computers, basically my whole life. So I found Bitcoin pretty early on and was very surprised by it. Yeah.
So when did you first find Bitcoin? What year was it? And where were you? What were you doing?
When I very first heard of Bitcoin for the very first time, it was probably around $1 or less, but I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe it could exist. I didn't believe it was something that, was real. And so I just ignored it. So that was the very first time I heard about it. I don't know, when was that? 2011 or something? It had to be about that time. Yeah.
What were some of the early objections that you had?
I just saw it like scrolling on YouTube or whatever, and saw, a little explainer video or something. And I got the concept that, okay, we have internet money, and that's what this is. And that's it. And so when I heard about that, I thought, okay, government's going to come in, destroy this. I'm not even going to take a second look at it. It's, it's over, right? This thing is going to be gone in 3 months. And so that was my objection, right? It was just government's going to kill it. That's it.
Wow. So you actually, most people that we've spoken to, including ourselves, the first time we saw Bitcoin, we didn't get it. We didn't even know what we were looking at.
Yeah.
There's only been 2 on the show so far who saw it the first time and got it the first time. But it almost sounds like you got it the first time, but then you immediately went to this step where you're like, well, if there's an alternative monetary system out there that, works globally around the clock and you don't need any permission, I don't even need to get into this because they're going to destroy this immediately. The nation state's going to roll. Bye.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I didn't know that it was permissionless. I didn't quite understand that, or maybe hear about it or whatever. I just thought, this is some group of people that have made this, and I just didn't consider the possibility that a decentralized money was possible. I was like, they're going to get thrown in jail, all these people, and that's it. Right. And so I just thought there was a centralized node of failure, that could be taken over. And when I came back to it and looked and saw how it worked and that there is no centralized authority, that's when I took a second look and really liked it.
Man, and in your form, you talked about distributed consensus, and I thought, man, that's two beautiful words right in a row. And I like that. What a nice, neat, tidy, concise way to just talk about that aspect of Bitcoin. So for our satillionaires who are still trying to figure out what you mean by permissionless, what you mean by centralized versus decentralized, distributed consensus, like how would you explain that to someone who's trying to grasp the concept of the fact that we don't need anybody's permission? There is no CEO, there's no 1-800 number, and that's part of what makes it so resilient.
Yes. Okay. That was hard for me to grasp too. The internet, it's out there. You've got all these computers talking to each other. So I kind of imagine it as kind of like a phone network. We've got a bunch of people, they got phones. But typically on a phone call, you can only talk to like one person, right? So you can dial up your phone and go talk to somebody. And so the reason I thought that kind of this distributed consensus was not a possibility, or just assumed it wasn't, is because I thought, well, if I dial up my phone and I talk to my grandma and I tell her, I'm sending you this much fake money, right? This much, whatever. Then I call somebody else and I tell them, I'm going to send you that much as well, but that's, all I really had. Then it seemed like it was just way too easy to kind of lie on this network where you're only talking to like one person. And that's how computers have to talk on the internet. They just send a message to one other computer. So I thought, well, it's just too easy to lie. It's just too easy. So you can never have, if you want everybody to know the truth about something, like everybody's balance of Bitcoin or whatever, then you have to give all that information to a central unit, a central person, authority, bank, government, entity. And then that person has to tell everybody, this is what's true, right? And so you have to kind of consolidate the truth and then distribute it. And that's what I thought was just the fact of life. And then when I looked at the, algorithm, the proof of work algorithm and all of that stuff, I was blown away. I was like, no way. They figured out a way for us to all communicate in a distributed manner. Just, we don't have to centralize the data. And the network itself can act as that centralization. So I was just blown away. It was amazing.
So to try to understand that for myself, in the digital world, it's so easy for us to just control, copy, paste information willy-nilly. I can type up a document and then make 100 million billion copies of that document. And when you were looking at Bitcoin, around that first time, not only did you feel like, well, the government's going to knock this one out, but also, hey, it's too easy to, to basically try to control, copy, paste your Bitcoin balance, right?
Like spend the same money twice.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. That's what I thought. I thought it was, and that's why I assumed, okay, well then that means since it's so easy to just lie on this network, spend your money twice, whatever. then they must be centralizing the data in some entity, and that entity is going to get thrown in jail because government doesn't want a competitor. And
So
then that was
if
it.
if that were true, that would introduce a single point of failure risk.
Yeah,
That was also
that's right.
unacceptable in terms of visualizing this really, becoming what it is today.
That's right. Yeah, it never could have.
So then when you came back to it and went, well, hang on, it actually turns out that all of these computers keeping their own copy of the same record. And, on the show we talk about, it's kind of like a giant public spreadsheet for everybody to look at. That's when you realized, okay, hang on, you can't double spend. You can't lie. Everything gets checked. This is worth something. And was that the moment where you decided, okay, I'm going to start exchanging, my fiat currency for Bitcoin? Is that when you started stacking your first sats? Is when that clicked for you?
That's right. Yes. I didn't stack much. I was working as a waiter at the time. So I didn't really have much money to stack, but that's, when I came back to it and I saw that they had solved these problems and the network itself acts as the centralized authority. They distribute it amongst every node on the network. That was just amazing. So I got involved. I tried to stack a little. It was very hard to buy any at that time. You had to figure it out. You had to go, I don't know, you had to like research and then, MoneyGram or something. I don't know. And so didn't pick up very much. But being, kind of a computer geek or whatever, I kind of was very interested in the technology and thinking about, well, what other things could we do with this technology and where could this evolve? And so I wish I had been kind of an investor mindset back then. Would have served me well. But I just started playing with the technology and exploring that.
Do you mean the technology specific to Bitcoin, or do you mean the technology of, the blockchain that helps underpin it?
Yeah, back in the day, it was like, okay, Bitcoin, you get the concept of Bitcoin, and then you're like, okay, no, the technology it runs on is called blockchain. Got it. Okay, so that has to do with the distributed ledger, the proof of work concept, the hashing. And so I started very quickly getting interested in the blockchain technology, and because it was one way to do distributed consensus, and it's probably the only real way to do distributed consensus. Now that we've kind of evolved, I think the industry's like figured out, well, distributed consensus is a gradient, and Bitcoin's way over there on the edge where it's very like strict. But we could have like some centralization because it's really a lot faster and we can do a lot more things. But so that's where a lot of these other projects, they're kind of in the gray zone where it's halfway to decentralization. But that seems fine for a lot of use cases. I don't think it's fine for money or store of value, but it's fine for a lot of other use cases. So, so I would say, this blockchain technology that they figured out is kind of the only true distributed consensus technology there is. So I was fascinated by that.
What type of applications do you think could also, justify the work and the computing power and the inefficiency of a blockchain?
Right. Yeah. So back then, back in 2012, 13, 14, 15, the innovation was all on the chain itself. Like right at the beginning, it was like, well, could we try different consensus mechanisms? And that's when they discovered proof of stake, and they tried a lot of different things, and so it was like the actual chain was the innovation. So you got stuff like Litecoin, Monero. You got a bunch of the early bifurcations, forks of Bitcoin. And that was cool to watch, to see what people were coming up with. And then eventually you get to Ethereum, where it's like, well, why don't we make a world computer? That was their first kind of marketing term, but smart contracts, programmable money. Let's try to make it a little more able to do anything. And so, back in those days, I was working on a little idea called Nereal, and that was I was saying, well, why don't we try to bifurcate it with AI, and we'll make a distributed consensus mechanism that we'll call proof of prediction. Because the future always happens, and so it's something we all can see, and then we'll make a proof of prediction algorithm, and we'll manifest this network from the bottom up that can predict the future, of any particular thing or whatever. And so I worked on that for a little while in those days, and it was a very hard problem. I learned a lot by that project. It's a very, very hard problem to solve. It has a lot of complexities in it. And so I kind of put it on the back burner. But that's kind of really what I thought we needed to go to eventually, is combining blockchain with AI. And a lot of people, like you said, blockchain's really slow, and AI requires lots of cycles and to do things, very fast. And so they're almost on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as computation bandwidth goes. So, but that's what I've been trying to do ever since. I kind of put it on the back burner and then came back to it more recently. But after that phase of kind of seeing what we could do with the consensus layer at the bottom, then I think a new phase happened where they said, okay, well, let's keep the consensus layer basically the same, but we'll use proof of stake maybe, but we'll build stuff on top of that. And that's kind of like where you get Ethereum with like smart contracts and stuff. So back in the day when I saw that, I thought, okay, there's basically three reasons, to use blockchain at this time, back in 2015 or so. One of them is for the store of value money, internet money, Bitcoin, right? And the name brand and everything. And so one of them is that. One of them is privacy. If you want to trade, do stuff privately, there's Monero, there's, I don't know, whatever else. And then I thought another one is probably some kind of smart contract, programmable, generalizable money or something like that. And so I saw those three because I thought, well, if I had to divide the space, I mean, it's probably hard to do. It's probably hard to combine those all three into one master token, right? And so I was like, maybe it's possible. I mean, maybe you could build all of those into Bitcoin or on top of Bitcoin, or vice versa. I didn't really know, but I thought it's probably hard to combine them. So those were the three kind of use cases that I saw at the time.
Jordan, could you help me and our audience understand a little bit more about the consensus and the proof of work mechanism within the Bitcoin protocol?
Yeah, totally. So each of these computers are doing something called hashing. So what that is they say, okay, I'm going to look for a special number that satisfies some crazy equation, essentially. And they don't know what it is, and they don't have any way to figure out what it is. The only thing they can do is make a random number, see if it works, and if it doesn't, throw it away and make a new one. So that's called hashing. It's literally just guess and check. How fast can your computer guess a number and check to see if it was correct? And then if it wasn't, just guess another one. And as soon as it finds the correct one, that's the person or the computer that's allowed to take all the transactions they've heard of while they've been guessing and compile them up into a little block and say, here's a block of transactions for everybody to see. And they put their, their stamp on it, their that number they found that works. And they put that on it, and then everybody else can see that their block of transactions has the special number that works for the puzzle they're all trying to solve. And once they see that, they know something. They know that that computer must have guessed a lot of numbers because it had no other way of figuring out the truth. So they know that it did a lot of work. And so that's the proof of work mechanism. The computers are able to prove through this guess and check method that they've done a lot of work. Now, once they do that work, they put up the block, everybody accepts it because they know that they did that much work. And then that provides a brand new puzzle. So now everybody can start with that new puzzle to try to find the next block, try to find the right number that allows them to commit a block to everybody. So I don't know, does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, it answers proof of work really well, I might add. So thank you so much for that. Second question is, as Bitcoin evolves, there are, from what I understand, volunteers who are working on the Bitcoin protocol and keeping it up to date, and maybe a new version is issued, and then we have to get some form of consent from the miners and the nodes that are running the protocol themselves. I don't fully understand how all of that works. Like how can a change be made to the Bitcoin protocol?
That is a more difficult one because it's got a lot of nuance. I kind of feel like, unfortunately, I don't know if it's unfortunately or if maybe it's a fortunate thing, but just my natural tendency says it's probably unfortunate that the code is not tied into the chain itself in some way. I'd like to see that, but it does seem like it would have been overkill to have done that way back in the day. So anyway, to answer your question, you're right. It's a lot of volunteer coders that are maintaining the code. Actually, one of my friends was a contributor to Bitcoin way back in the day. What was it? 2000, like probably 12 or 13. He found like a little tiny bug and issued a pull request up to the, code and said, hey, you forgot what was it? A semicolon or something. You forgot to put that in here. And so technically he's a contributor to the code, right? He figured something out that would make it better. Everybody agreed that would make it better. And then it was added to the code. So that's kind of it, right? That's all it is. It's those that are maintaining now. But you're right that once the code is written, the miners that are running the software, they don't have to adopt that code if they don't want to. Like if they say, okay, this update is not good for the network, it's not good for me, this update has a bug, whatever, for whatever reason, or maybe they're just lazy, they don't have to update. And so there's really two layers of the code. There's the consensus mechanism layer, which is very difficult to change because everybody's going to resist it. Miners are going to resist any change there, whatever. But then there's the layers on top of that don't actually influence what miners choose to accept as a block. And that's the consensus. We all agree this is a block. there's code above that doesn't have to do with that, which is probably easier to change. But the consensus layer code is probably very difficult. I've actually thought of changes you could make to that. Small changes, they don't have any other effect, but they would allow us to use stuff like, it would allow us to use Bitcoin as a credit mechanism as well as a hard money in addition. But it's I've never really considered trying to push that in because it's just probably absolutely impossible to do, right? And so this little change that I have in mind that could be beneficial potentially, and it's very simple, has no other problems, it would never get accepted, right? And so, but that's a good thing of the network, because that means if there's something bad that somebody wants to do, it's even harder to get in, to the network. So, so I think that's kind of a naturally forming good pattern that has occurred. Yeah.
So if it's hard to make good changes, it's hard to make bad changes too.
Extra hard. Yeah. You've got to trick everybody.
Because my understanding is even if you're able to make an improvement to Bitcoin, you then need the miners and the nodes to adopt that version of the software, whether you want to call it a strict upgrade or whether you want to call it a soft fork, or is it just the nodes that need to accept it, or does everyone, Chris and I don't need to accept it because we just transact on top of the Bitcoin network and we're like, we love Bitcoin, yay! But the people who are actually, like Atlas, holding up the world here because they believe in it that much, and because they're, Bitcoin captures their incentives, doesn't it? And drives it all into the future of Bitcoin. Even if you were able to make that change, it then needs to go to the network of miners and nodes. And, we can see on the Clark Moody dashboard, some people are running the first version of Bitcoin still.
Yeah.
The small percentage. So, is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah. We can't change the consensus rules because that would invalidate the people that are still running the first version. So that's exactly how it works. You got to get them all to switch. And it's easier if you have an idea and you want to implement something, it's easier just to make a new chain than to do that. That's almost impossible to change anything.
So we did have a guest on the show who did share his ideas for making Bitcoin better. So even though it might be a long shot, I think we'd still like to hear exactly what you think could change about Bitcoin to make it better or enable this credit thing you're talking. Like, what are you talking about?
I was thinking about credit. I don't know if this is the best solution because there's like mesh credit networks. I think those are cool. There's all kinds of stuff for credit. But here you have Bitcoin, it's hard money, right? There's a limited supply and all that. But we don't have a way on the chain itself to specify something like an IOU, which is credit, right? And so, but you could extremely easily, they could have put that in very, very easily without any other ramifications, no other problems. And so what they did is they said, as far as I can see, like maybe I'm wrong about this, but what they did is they said, somebody makes a transaction and they say, I'm going to send you 10 Bitcoins, but I don't have any Bitcoins in my account. I don't have any Bitcoins on my addresses, nothing, right? So, and the way we know that is we can trace back the movement of Bitcoin. So we can trace it all the way back to some kind of Genesis block, some Coinbase, some, every time there's a new block, new coins are created. So you can trace everybody's coin back to a creation point. And if you can't trace it back, what do the miners do? They just say, that is not a valid transaction. I'm going to ignore it. That's it. And because we don't want to be sending Bitcoin that doesn't exist. So, well, when I learned how that works, I said, well, you could include it and everybody would know that's not a real Bitcoin. That's an IOU because we can't trace it all the way back, you know? And so if you're willing to pay the fee to put in the transaction, why not include that transaction? And then all you have to do is the wallet software has to be able to say, is this a real Bitcoin or is this a fake Bitcoin? Is this an IOU? And it would just show two two balances. You have this much real Bitcoin, you have this much Bitcoin promised to you, and that's it, right? And so you might say, well, what good would that do? And I think on its own, it probably wouldn't do much good, right? So it would probably be more confusing than helpful. But if you are able to pair that with sophisticated analytics that says, you got this much IOUs from somebody who pays their IOUs, you can start to give like a credit score, and you could start to come up with a number that's actually kind of valuable, a number of fake Bitcoin that you have, and people would start trading in that instead. So I think it would be a benefit if you had all those pieces together. I don't think it's hard to implement. It is hard, I mean, because you'd have to get all the wallet software to update as well. But as far as the chain and consensus layer goes, it's not a difficult thing. But that's my half-baked idea. It's not fully fleshed out because, like I said, when I thought of it, I was like, well, this is never going to happen. So why am I wasting my time thinking about this? So, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you also thought government was going to destroy Bitcoin in a few months. That didn't happen. So, hey, maybe get after it. It almost sounds like you could have a scenario where I could go to Chris and say, hey, Chris, I want to start a business. I need 2 Bitcoin to start the business. And I could almost send him an IOU for 2 Bitcoin. And then the blockchain would record that I'm in debt to this guy and need to make him whole over time.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, that's the point of credit. And so credit has a real use case in our economy. I love hard money, So, but I think credit's not just it's been monopolized by the banks. And so I think typically people who are like myself, libertarian leaning or at one point anarchists perhaps, kind of look at that and say, oh, well, then credit must be evil because it was monopolized by the banks. But looking at it from just an informational standpoint, it has a use case. But it's I don't know if it's even possible. I kind of feel like the same way I felt with Bitcoin in the first place, thinking about distributed credit. I'm like, well, I don't know how to do it. Maybe somebody will figure it out, but this could be one solution. I don't really know. Bit credit. But of course, there's mesh networks. You don't need a blockchain for credit. If you have a mesh network, you can just send IOUs directly to the person. So you don't need it to be a distributed consensus mechanism for credit. It's interesting that way. But it could be beneficial to do so. So, if you're willing to pay the fee to put up the IOU, then, I think it has potential, but I don't know if it's the best solution.
It almost reminds me of like an escrow account as well. Like if I wanted to purchase some tangible good that's right now sitting somewhere across the world, and I want to extend an IOU to the seller, but then wait to actually release the funds until I have received the goods and inspected them to make sure that, because it's scary, right? If you're trying to buy something globally, to just send your Bitcoin out like that and not have any verification that you're actually going to receive what you believe you bought, like, and it meets the specifications that you need and all that stuff without inspecting it, that's a problem that I don't know if there's a solution today that exists to address that.
This could help with that. I don't know if it would be a great solution or the best or optimal, but it could be. I don't know. But it could, like, that's a very good use case to say this system could get off the ground with use cases like that. Yeah.
Big ones, right? I mean, not going to require a ton of transactions to make this thing worth its weight.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't need any smart contracts or anything like that. Nothing fancy. It's all very simple stuff.
So, all the Satillionaires out there, hit the like and subscribe now if you thought I was going to miss this. But about 20 minutes ago, Jordan casually mentioned that he attempted to fuse the blockchain with AI in order to predict the future.
Oh my God.
Are you kidding me?
I know.
Huh? Say what? Like, huh? Predict what, dude?
So, I wanted to build a proof of prediction algorithm because it felt like it would work. When you make a consensus algorithm, a proof of algorithm, what you need is something that anybody can do quickly, like the guess and check thing, and know if they're correct or something. But you need it so that other people can check their result quickly to see if they're correct. And if you can do that, then you have a potential candidate for a proof algorithm. So we found proof of work, then we found proof of stake. I think there's probably a few others that are not as good. But I thought, well, we can all make predictions and we can all see the future when it happens, because we're gonna go to the future. So that seems like you could make a proof of prediction algorithm. Everybody broadcasts out what their prediction is going to be, then it happens, then we all say, oh, that guy got closest and he can make a block. And now the problem is, though, with that, well, there's several problems, but one of them is you have to wait till the future happens. And I wanted to make it so that you could do this about anything. It would probably be a lot easier if you just did one thing, like, I don't know, one thing very obvious, who's going to be the president or something, So one thing that everybody knows, very obvious. You don't need an oracle. You don't need some authority to tell you what the truth was. So if you wanted to do that, you could probably make a proof of prediction algorithm that's viable. But that's not really what I wanted. I wanted to be able to predict any potential thing, the price of this, the sentiment on Twitter of that, I wanted to be able to predict anything that changes over time. Because I wanted this algorithm at the base to unfold into a proof of prediction network that you could say, I want this predicted, and then the network would start predicting that, and that's what I wanted, right? So wasn't able to do it in 2014. We tried for like a year and we explored and we learned, that's how I learned everything that I know about blockchain pretty much, is I was trying to do this project. And then when I could see everything clearly and understood that's not the right approach, it's probably not possible. If it is, it's not possible for me to do because it's just way too advanced. That's when I kind of put it on the back burner and said, I'll come back to this later on. So my current project, Satori, is an evolution of that. I came back to it and I said, okay, we're not going to build proof of prediction in at the consensus layer mechanism at the very bottom. We're going to use proof of work. But on top of that, we're going to build a network that chooses to predict everything. It's not guaranteed by the consensus mechanism, but that's what it does. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm working on nowadays.
What are the top 3 things that you want to unleash this thing on to determine what the predictions will be?
I want to build a world model. So that would mean if I bifurcated that space and said, what does a world model consist of? I would say we'll start with low-hanging fruit, like government statistics, demographics, the weather, and economic prices. I think eventually what that world model is going to end up being once it gets more sophisticated is, well, why don't we track human sentiment? And so it's starting to track where it's starting to track like memes and where the money is going and predicting where the money goes according to what people believe and start predicting what people believe. And so that's the world model. And it's, maybe when it comes to fruition down the line, but I think you just start by just tracking the largest metrics of the world, like government statistics and large prices and stuff like that. What kind of data streams in the world affect everything else? And so you start with those, and then you have a world model, and you can kind of build specific predictions about specific, industries, companies, individuals, on top of that world model. That's your foundation.
What an incredible conversation.
Yeah, I know.
Let's recap the conversation here with Jordan. We've got Jordan here out of Utah. And I believe you talked about having like a background, at university and in your early experiences with software, with computers, with that whole world of technology. And when you first found Bitcoin, it was early. It was still about $1 a pop, which is quite nice. But you had this strange moment where you understood what you were looking at, but as we will see is quite commonplace for Jordan, he decided to predict the next step, which was, this thing's gonna get murked. Like this thing is absolutely gonna get chopped off at the legs immediately.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll move on. But when you came back later and saw that it was still around, and that it kind of went even deeper than you initially thought, in terms of not being centralized, but being decentralized, not operated by a government or a bank, but operated by people all around the world who are working together through their computers to establish the truth and create a situation where you just can't fool its users, right? And you create this form of hard money through technology. So once you got that, you said, you know what? Thank you for your tip, sir. I hope you enjoyed your meal. I'm going to take that and I'm going to get it into Bitcoin. I'm going to take my waiter action and I'm going to get it into Bitcoin. And I'm going to go even deeper. Let's unpack the blockchain. What could this do? What does this mean? The fellow is a philosopher, my guy. Holy smokes. Jordan is a philosopher. What are the applications of blockchain? Let me see if I can just click AI into the blockchain. Back in 2014? Are you kidding me?
Sheesh.
That's like the most prototypical AI ever, dude. Holy smokes. This guy was early days trying to create like a nuclear fusion between a very slow inefficient but useful item over here on the form of the blockchain and an ultra quick high demand AI to try to predict the future. What? Proof of prediction? Huh? Whoa. And couldn't quite get it to work, kept going. Now we fast forward. Maybe you're taking another crack at it, right? Because AI has moved forward quite a bit. And we would like for you to solve that. And then we would like for you to ask it whether SatChats is going to go to the moon, because we sure hope so.
Please.
But we also talked a little bit about possible improvements to Bitcoin, which includes the ability to create credit scores, to take that whole metric of whether a human is trustworthy or not out of the hands of centralized authorities. So fascinating to see how much work you've done in and around Bitcoin, the blockchain, the future, different improvements. For all of our Satillionaires out there who just got lit on fire from some of the stuff that, went over both our heads, where can they find you? Where do you want our Satillionaires to go to learn more about, I believe it was Satori Net?
Yeah.
Where can they go?
Satori Net, SATORINET.io. And it kind of, we're trying to make it so that it's decentralized as much as possible. So we're trying to make a distributed AI. We have the network up and running, and anybody can go just search through the data and see the predictions that are being generated just on the website. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, there we go. Distributed AI. Okay. So we're going to make you an offer here, but before we do, we saw that you chose French onion as your flavor of Ithaca hummus. So I am going to serve as your taste buds here today in the studio. Had you ever heard of Ithaca hummus before coming on the show?
No.
Wonderful.
And if he's out there in Utah, where can Jordan and everyone out there in Utah get Ithaca hummus?
You got a Whole Foods or a Sprouts nearby?
Both.
Either one.
Sweet.
Bam. Okay.
Cool.
Whole Foods or Sprouts. So we've got proof of chickpeas right here in this tub. I'm going to get myself a fat glob of this French onion here, and we're going to give it a whirl, okay? All right, so let's give a bite here.
Yeah.
It is good, though.
Sorry to do this to you, Jordan, but
I haven't had lunch yet.
it's got like a caramelized onion, little sweetness, some garlic in there, roasted garlic. So good.
Like, would you describe that? Does that classify as umami flavor to have that caramelized?
Exactly.
It does. Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
That is some like good, rich umami flavor.
It's like if you drank the French onion soup.
Yes, it is. It is with the like the cheese on top and yeah.
So good.
Oh my goodness. What we want for you, Jordan, is to next time you hit Whole Foods or Sprouts, get some French onion, get you a fat glob, chomp on it, and then come back to your video on YouTube and put in the comments what you thought of the dip, okay?
You got it.
All right, so Ithaca hummus, buy the dip. Let's make you your offer here, brother.
All right, Jordan. So here at SatChats, we like to offer a small token of our appreciation to each of our guests. We believe in value for value, and you gave us a lot of value today just showing up for an hour with us and chatting about sats with us. So we're going to offer you the choice between $50 and $50 worth of Bitcoin. And I've got the Clark Moody dashboard behind me, which says that the price of one Bitcoin is $82,000 right now, which translates to 1,219 sats per dollar. Multiplied by 50 gives you 60,950 sats or $50.
I always take the sats.
Yes!
I knew you would.
Come on! Let's go.
All right, so you're 32.
So that is you are the 32nd to choose the sat. So you are number 35, Jordan, and we'll go down forever as number 35, Jordan. And we appreciate you keeping the streak alive and keeping it on the side of Bitcoin. So if you made it this far, give us your value for our value. Like Jordan's chat about sats. Subscribe to our channel. Be among the first 999 plus one who subscribe so that you can be in the running for our Satillionaire giveaway. Who doesn't want to become a Satillionaire overnight? Are you kidding me?
1 million sats?
1 million sats? One day that's going to be $1 million. And they're going to be like, man, those dudes back in 2025 were absolute chads. They dropped $1 million on some dude on the internet just for clicking a mouse button or tapping their screen.
You just got to subscribe. Come on.
That's the smallest proof of work imaginable. A click or a tap for $1 million. And don't forget, potentially even more valuable, is the unlocking of the live show Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern. And if you're on Spotify, 5 stars, make it all happen so that we can chat about sats with every single human being on Earth, one-on-one. And remember, Sat Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. Also, our guests' views and predictions are their own. Thanks so much, guys. We appreciate it.